All right, well, let's get started. Welcome, folks. I'm Doug Crandall from Advancing Employment, which is housed at IHDD, University of Georgia. And we have a great panel today for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Some really cool folks. You'll probably see, at least in a few of the panelists, the banner behind them of the 9 organizations and entities in Georgia that form the coalition. It has been just a treat. It's been a lot of work that these folks have done, but just been a great opportunity to build our coalition, to understand one another more, and most importantly, do the best job that we can for job seekers with disabilities. So we have got panelists who are going to introduce themselves, but just real quickly, we've got a lot of stuff planned for the month. We have 2 great proclamations. Dr. Brady at GCDD secured Governor Kemp's proclamation, and hopefully Joseph will be able to put that in chat so you can get it and use it. And Cheryl Ann Frazier at the ADA State Coordinator's Office secured Chairwoman Hendrickson's from Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners. So those are real useful, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the Q&A. Before we get any further, though, this is a webinar series that goes throughout the month. And it looks like Joseph is putting files in the chat as we speak. Next week, same time, same place, we'll have veterans, a panel on veterans, webinar, I should say. And then the week after that, Tricia Jones-Parkin from Utah State University, with some really exciting stuff around transition age youth. And then we will end the month with the owner of Pop and Joe's Popcorn and his sister talking about self-employment. And we hope Rachel Davis from the Edge Connection will be able to join us as well. So we see a lot of familiar names. I think some of you know we do this pretty informally. We like to have fun, put stuff in chat. Make sure you're muted if you're not asking a question or making a comment. Other than that, we just ask, as always, to take this opportunity to silence the devices and take some time to really focus and listen and seek to understand. This is a great opportunity. Okay, so we're going to start without any further ado, my friends. And so the first, Dr. Brady, tell us who you are, what your organization does, and what you're doing for NDEAM. So go ahead, Kate.
Thank you very much, Doug. So pleasure to be here with all of you. My name's Kate Brady. I work at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, where I am the Deputy Director. In that role, I manage our programmatic agenda, our public information work, and our policy work. And the DD Council, there's one of us in every state. We are part of the DD Act mandated network and get to collaborate with university centers of excellence and protection and advocacy organizations and many others. Our goal and mission is to bring about social and policy changes that promote opportunities for the very wide spectrum of diverse folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to live, learn, work, play, and worship in their communities. And our organization does our work through grant making, through grassroots advocacy, as well as legislative advocacy, and through public information. So our activities during National Disability Employment Awareness Month have centered around great collaboration with the panelists you'll get to hear from today and the phenomenal coalition that the Advancing Employment TA Center has put together. You will see on our social media channels a ton of content that we hope will be useful and actionable to you. We highly recommend that you know and be in communication with your elected officials, both local, state, and federal, on these issues that we will discuss today. As Doug mentioned, there is also a governor's proclamation that you can use. You can reference that with decision makers. You can reference that with employers, and it frames up the work and the aims that we'll be discussing today. The other thing that the Duty Council is doing that we really hope will reach employers is that we are highlighting NDEAM in the content that we create in partnership with the Atlanta Business Chronicle. And that, of course, reaches a predominantly employer audience and will make the business case for employing people with disabilities. So we're excited about that. Those of you Georgians that have been in this space for a while may remember the Take Your Legislator to Work program, which was an opportunity to introduce your elected officials to constituents who have disabilities and are working right in their communities. And because of the pandemic, we've dialed that kind of in-person activity back, but there certainly are virtual resources available on our website, so you're welcome to take advantage of those. And I think that hits the high points, Doug. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Brady. Thank you. We'll come back to you with those other questions that we've talked about. Cheryl Ann, who are you? What does your org do, and what are you planning for? You guys are planning a bunch for NDEAM.
Yes, we are. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cheryl Ann Frazier, and I am grateful to serve as Assistant State ADA Coordinator for Georgia with the State ADA Coordinator's Office, and our agency is the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission. And I will share a snippet of what our office does. And just so you know, our State ADA Coordinator, Stacey Valerie Peace, is also on this panel, so she will offer additional details a little later. So our State ADA Coordinator's Office's mission is to provide comprehensive educational and technical support for state agencies so that those programs, services, and activities operated by the state of Georgia are accessible and usable for everyone. We achieve our mission by executing current ADA training programs, technical assistance engagements, and facility improvement reviews. So our purpose. So the guiding principle of our office is to maintain compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, a civil rights law, of course, which requires equal access to those programs, services, and activities to individuals who have disabilities. And it also prohibits discrimination. We provide an open and meaningful accommodations request process, which offers resolution to complaints and allegations regarding the ADA in Georgia. We also provide a robust ADA training program for the state of Georgia agency ADA coordinators and our team members, 4 in total, small team. We're accessible by phone, email, and networking events to state agency personnel. We invite you to visit our website at www.ada.georgia.gov, and that's Georgia spelled out or Georgia just GA. And please visit us to find out all the other things that we do. And as Doug mentioned, we have so many plans for the commemoration and recognition of the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. But for right now, I'll focus on one thing, which encompasses a lot. We just released our e-newsletter entitled The ADA Informer. In this quarterly issue, we are featuring NDEAM and our Georgia Coalition. We have also included a press release regarding our support of this important recognition. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Doug Crandall, who leads the Georgia Coalition, and the interview is linked in our newsletter, as well as our upcoming events. We have also relaunched a remarkable webinar entitled Living and Thriving with a Disability, and that is featured in our newsletter. However, we will also play that in the 3rd week entitled Job Seekers. Very important for you to know, within this particular webinar, Living and Thriving with a Disability, it features 3 Georgia citizens who share a definition of disability, their disability, education, and their employment encounters. So I think that's going to be very important for the month that we are celebrating. And this webinar is a product of Access Georgia. Access Georgia is a collaboration between the State ADA Coordinator's Office and the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. And that's at Georgia Institute of Technology. So we're very excited to be here today, Doug. And remember, you all will hear more from State ADA Coordinator Peace when she speaks. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Cheryl Ann. A couple questions. Pam Campbell says, can you repeat the website address? But Pamela will copy and paste something in there. And Virginia's asking, how can they get the newsletter? If you registered, Virginia, we can send you that email that the ADA Coordinator's Office has put together.
And we invite everyone to become a subscriber when we send it out, please.
Absolutely. Do that. Do that. Thank you, Cheryl Ann.
Thank you.
Just, Joseph, I think you're going to talk about the website info, but I wanted to, excuse me, just real quick before Joseph does that. This group is, like, as I said, been hard at work. We've identified weekly themes. This week is policymakers. Next week is employers. As Cheryl Ann said, the third week job seekers, and the fourth week economic development and workforce development. So there'll be some crossover, and that's okay. We just wanted to try to give it a little bit of a way to handle all the great information that's coming out. We'll also be doing 3 other things that are kind of invitation. If this strikes you as something you would want to be invited to, let us know. We're doing 3 kind of symposiums, so they won't be webinars like this, but one symposium is on self-employment. And Nicole, well said. We will be aware of those acronyms, Nicole. Thank you. Thank you. We're always throwing them around. So there'll be a symposium on self-employment in Georgia. Another symposium, again, these are kind of just thought leaders getting together to see how we might address some of these things. Something that's one of our policy imperatives called State as Model Employer. And Nicole, that acronym is SAME, State as Model Employer. And then we'll be having a special Georgia Disability History session. That's the 17th day in October. Joseph will give you some of the links to NDEAM resources. But our own Jillian Grable will be doing that, and I'll be in conversation with her. And we'll probably record that one and then do a webcast. So Joseph, the website and resources.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Harrison. I work at Advancing Employment here at the Institute on Human Development and Disability at UGA, working with Mr. Crandall, and just going to speak briefly about the website, www.advancingemployment.com. We've recently updated it to reflect the webinar schedule for this month, as well as updated it to show all of our NDEAM resources and links, as well as some other information in addition to all the great resources and information that we have up there normally. So I'll put the link in chat, and please check it out if you have some time. Thanks.
Thank you, Joseph. And Stacy, we come back to you to further the look. There would be no NDEAM without Mr. Joseph and Cheryl Ann and Stacy, because they were just gracious, inviting everyone in. Joseph has worked tirelessly along with Whitney at IHDD with these great graphics and pulling everybody together. So take it away, Stacy.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Stacy Varapese, and I have the pleasure of serving as the State ADA Coordinator for the state of Georgia. Cheryl Ann Frazier has already shared our office's mission and what we do, so I'll tell you just a little bit about who we serve. Through our office's work, we serve primary customers and stakeholders. Our primary customers are state agency ADA coordinators, state agency HR professionals, the state fire marshals and code officials, state agency facility administrators, state agency design and construction professionals, and other state agency professionals, which includes executive leadership, general counsel, information and communication technology professionals, and training and development specialists. Our stakeholders are people with disabilities and disabilities-related organizations, our collaborative partners, which can include other state agencies, private companies, and federal government authorities, as well as the general public. So there is no one that we won't work with. I know that I gave you a long list of our primary customers, but we will serve anyone who contacts our office. So don't feel like I don't work for a state agency. I can't reach out to the state ADA coordinator's office because I don't know. We will serve you if you contact us. We'll do our best to provide you with information and guidance and technical and resources. So please do not hesitate to contact our office. Cheryl's already kind of spoken to what we're going to be doing for this month. So I'll turn it back over to you, Deb. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you very much. Amy, we're going to keep rolling here, Miss Price. So who you are, what you do, and what are you planning for NDEAM?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with so many people and have this conversation in Georgia. My name is Amy Price, and I started an organization called Price Support Network. And really the goal of the organization is how do we support those who have more barriers to finding employment opportunities. So we use customized supported employment, which uses a process called the discovery method, which really helps learn the gifts and skills and talents of people to help see what may be a good fit for them, knowing that we all do better in work if it's something that's in line with who we are. And so the process is a really incredible process to learn more about, to learn more about the person and where they may fit into a great career. I also wear another hat. I do some consulting for advancing employment. I get to work with providers throughout the state, kind of implementing customized employment and discovery method, which is a really fun thing. And I like being a part of having more stories of people getting jobs throughout the state. And so really excited about those conversations. My big focus for this month has really been on employers and how do we support employers to know that hiring people with disabilities is good business all around, that we can support people. There's longevity, there's a lot happening. So a lot of my focus has been on that second week. And then also another piece I've been working with that's in line with employers and job seekers is identifying what are some big employers within our state who are ready to hire people right now. And so we've been doing some work, and so you'll be seeing some of that out there and things. I also, since I am a provider and wear that hat a lot, I want to do a shout out to people on this call who are providers, because we have through Advancing Employment, we have a provider leadership group where we're really working on kind of not just focusing on this month, but how do we really focus on it throughout the year in the state of Georgia. And we've been focusing on a lot of our work started on policy, but also supporting each other and doing more work. So I'm gonna, like everyone else, put my email in. And so if you're in a provider who wants to be a part of a leadership group through Advancing Employment, please be in touch and we can do that. And let's all work together to get more people jobs and create more stories of success. So it just keeps happening.
Thank you, Amy. You can see by now why it's such a joy to spend time with these folks. It's really been a highlight for me since July. So what we're going to do for our participants, again, feel free to put anything in chat, a question, a comment, raise your hand. Joseph will unmute you. But we're going to ask our panel a few questions, going back to Dr. Brady. And the first one is a pretty simple one, and that is, what should Georgia do? Maybe Georgia leaders, legislators, since we're talking about policymakers this week, businesses as well. What should Georgia do to increase the employment rates of Georgians with disabilities? What should we do? So our panel is going to reflect on that, and we'd love to hear from you, your ideas, your comments. So Dr. Brady.
Thank you, Doug. I didn't know I'd get to go first. I tend to take a systems view, and I think the first thing is we need to kind of relinquish the mythology of there being not sufficient resources, right? Georgia has a fully funded, as in we cannot add money to our rainy day fund currently. So there are resources to fully fund individualized best practice employment supports for any person who has a disability and wants to go to work. So I think step one, relinquish that mythology. Step two, align those systems that already exist to provide those supports, namely the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, state Medicaid waivers, which are administered through both the Department of Community Health and the State Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, where people can access funding for supported employment, customized employment, and you'll see in the priorities that we'll talk about, could be receiving supports for supported self-employment. Those rates should be better aligned with national standards, and eligibility should be a non-issue. There's absolutely no reason that we can't offer those services to any person interested in them who has a disability. And last, I think we ought to invest, as we're doing this month, in having really robust and dispersed conversations with employers, big and small. And that's everything from answering questions about accommodations to on the ground job negotiation and creation through customized employment. I think if we did those things and we started early with high school students by creating summer employment, relinquishing the demand to identify a single goal, I think we would see a generational boom in successful career making. And I think in career making, we would see a culture change. And I think it's going to take a culture change for that change to happen at scale. All those things are easier said than done. And I think it takes tremendous collaboration and conviction and political will. So that might be the underpinning that we need to generate, is that political will. Hope that is sufficient, Doug.
As always, so well said. Mr. Todd, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, it was towards the question. I didn't know if it was just for the panelists, but you said it was like for everyone that has suggestions. So I didn't know if we were gonna.
We want to hear it, Fran.
Oh, okay. So to your question, I feel like the way we could get people with intellectual and developmental disabilities more jobs is just understanding that people shouldn't just see us for our disabilities, see us for what we can bring to the table, instead of just instead of just saying, well, we're going to bring you here because you have that certain thing. Just understanding like tokenism is not okay when it comes to just hiring someone because they fit a certain quota. I also believe another way we could make sure that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities get jobs in the communities is introducing them to things that they really care about, like what they want to, if that's wanting to become an advocate, sure, give them opportunities to be in a room full of advocates talking about things that they want to talk about. And just instead of having them like think, hey, maybe I maybe I'll just work at McDonald's. Now, I'm not saying working at McDonald's is a bad thing, but it's just for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, it's more for them out there than just flipping burgers. And just like I said, flipping birds is just introducing into different programs and trainings that really can help them brighten their horizons and get that job that they want and see for themselves. That's it for me.
It's so well said as always, my friend. Thank you. Beautifully said. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Cheryl Ann, that points us to you. What should we do? What should we do to increase the employment rates of Georgians with disabilities?
Hi, Doug. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, I'll be general. I think we should look at the overall picture as well. I believe that we should expand our recruitment and advertising tools and pools by partnering with advocacy groups and other ADA partners to see if employment opportunities can be shared on their websites and sent to their listservs. I think getting the information out is important, that there are openings. The other thing is, as with any recruitment effort, we must go to the spaces where our potential desired teammates will reside or work or hang out. So we need to go into our communities. Additional and specific training for employers to discuss reasonable accommodation processes and accessibility solutions to ensure a welcoming space in the workplace. And then accessible websites. Websites play a big part in our everyday lives right now. So by providing accessible websites, we will align with identifying barriers to the application as well as hiring processes. So I think those things are very important for employers to put into place.
I love that, Cheryl Ann. Thanks, guys, for being patient with us as we're trying to read the chat too. Mr. Boyd, I believe you have a question, so please unmute, and we'd love to hear from you, Ken.
Yes, thank you, Doug, very much. I just wanted to go back and present a fact, and maybe it's really a question to what Kate led off with in terms of money, and funding always comes up in every conversation. I was reading an article came out from APSI about GVRA, and where people, the combination of the processes of DBHDD and GVRA of getting that person out there into a job with the help of a provider in the state, that Georgia was allocated approximately $122 million to assist in this, and obviously other functions as well. But the sad part is that they only spent 32 million of that amount. When asked if they needed any more of it, Georgia did not ask for any reallotment. So it's really tough to talk about the lack of funding when we turn funding down and somebody's trying to give it to us. So if anybody has any more information about that, I've written a letter to DBHDD, and I got a very vanilla answer back.
Mr. Boyd, thank you. It's an important issue that continues to fragment Georgia, and we couldn't agree any more, Ken. It's the reason we developed the 2021 Disability Employment Policy Imperatives. Joseph has put that in the chat, and we'll be talking about it. It touches on both of those and more. Ken, I mentioned that we'll be having a symposium on state as model employer. In Tennessee, they take that so seriously. In other words, this is an approach that's embraced by the Governors Association, and it's pretty simple. It's the state in all of its aspects should really be the model for businesses in a state. Tennessee's so good at it that they just this past May developed an entire HR position in state government to help customize and make accommodations for jobs throughout Tennessee state government. And we will, Mr. Motor, myself, and others will be meeting on that, Ken. We'd invite you to it if you'd like to help us to make some recommendations, and we can include both funding and this path. State as model employer is already figured out. Our neighbors to the north have figured it out, and we can do it too. Yeah, thank you, Ken. Rebel Helm says we really need to start with the youth so that families are aware of services and see us providing employment opportunities for youth and young adults. Absolutely. That's the true spirit of WIOA. Cynthia says, I think we should educate employers because they lack knowledge of hiring folks with disabilities. And that is true. And I think you're bringing up GVRA, Cynthia, as a critical part in that as well. Debbie is asking you, Ken, curious about Mr. Boyd's role in this scenario. I appreciate what you just added to the conversation.
Surely, I'm the retired CEO of a provider in Savannah. Doug doesn't remember, but we invited Doug many, many years ago to train our job coaches. And I've come back to help my former employer on a part-time basis in the area of supported employment. Employability is in Savannah. At one point, we were about 300 individuals that were out working in the Savannah community. Like everyone else, COVID has hurt those numbers a little bit, but they're slowly growing back. And totally agree with the point that was just made about youth and transition from high school. There's a very active group there, teachers, mentors. It's a program across the state. Unfortunately, again, they're part-time people, but they really act as great liaisons from the providers to the high school special ed programs and those individuals that work there with those students. So it's a fantastic idea. And from the employer perspective, sorry to take so long here, Doug, I apologize. We're all passionate about this. On the 28th of October, there'll be a supported employment celebration. It's already been out there advertised by DBHDD and GCDD, and hope everyone tunes in. It'll be virtual on the 28th from noon to 1:30 p.m. You can sign up, but we've reached out to the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and there's going to be a special feature there from their CEO, Chris Clark, to advocate from the employer side of this untapped resource in the state of Georgia. And as everyone on this call is passionately involved in that, I think that's just one more aspect of promoting from the employer perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. And Christine Gudgeon has posted the report in chat as well. Let's take Caitlin, and then I want to get back to the panel. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Sanders. I was a special education teacher and worked with the Department of Special Ed in my district. I'm currently getting my master's in public administration at UGA. And I really wanted to kind of piggyback off the comment about the youth. I think it is extremely critical that we start thinking about employment when students are entering school, so that we provide them with a quality education that really sets them up for success when they age out of the school system. I'm extremely passionate about this work, and I'm really excited to be here.
Well, Caitlin, as you know, you got to say "Go Dogs" all the time. We say it all the time. So we're glad you're with us. Okay, so let's go ahead here. I can't remember where I stopped, but I'm just gonna let the panel talk now. We were on the question. So if you haven't answered this on the formal panel, what should Georgia do to increase the employment rates? And since we're, coming up on about 20 minutes left here, if you want to talk about the panel, any of those policy imperatives, Joseph has put that in the chat. Please take a look at those. I'm going to be honest with you, since Ken's kind of leading the honesty train here. When we developed, along with GCDD and others, the 8 policy imperatives related to disability employment in Georgia, none of the funders have reached out to us. It has been disseminated. It has been, there are very useful links. There's background on each one of the policy imperatives. We tried to keep them simple and digestible. But we're going to continue to amplify those 8 policy imperatives, because I think if we don't, we're just missing an opportunity. As as Ken said, there's so many people who are passionate, and we have talent like Mr. Todd and everybody else that's on this call. I see so much talent when I look through the participants list. There is no reason why we can't do these things. But there's one thing that has been so apparent to me in Georgia for 26 years, and that is the fragmentation. I just can't tell you how fragmented some of our funders are, how little focus we put on the demand side for employers. One of the policy imperatives is a Georgia-specific tax incentive for those workers with disabilities who have had to work for sub-minimum wages. That's very doable. It's doable because it's not a big number of folks, and it's the right thing to do, and I think most people would back us on it. But please continue, if you haven't already, to share those 8 policy imperatives. Okay, so panel, I'm turning it back over to you. What should we do, if you haven't spoken yet, to increase the employment rates?
I'm happy to jump in.
All right.
And I'm going to wear strongly my hat as a provider. So I worked for a provider for about 4 years and have now been my own provider for about 6 years now. And I think everything that everyone has said is so just spot on. There's a need for some policy focus. There's a need to start younger. There's a lot that can be done. But I think I want to talk more from the experience of kind of working with people directly and the supports that I see people need. So I'm going to share a little bit of the persons, we're calling our job seekers, and then also our employers. So on the job seeker side, I think that there's we do a lot of saying, here's where people with disabilities work. So you have a disability, this person hires people with disabilities. And I think that is such a big injustice. And when I talk to people who aren't in this field and who don't do their work, they're like, oh, I know this company who hire, just go to Kroger, just go to Publix, they'll hire you. Whereas, like, if I was put as a bagger at Publix, I like talking to people too much. Like, I would fail. Like, people would be like, stop talking to the people you're taking out your groceries for. Just take out the groceries. So I think we do a disservice to people when we don't understand what people's gifts, skills, and talents are, and we don't work to help place them in a job that fits who they are. And so what happens is you have people who, you have employers who are like, oh, I would love to work on your support this and hire somebody, but it's not a good fit from the beginning. And then that employer has a bad taste in their mouth where they're like, I'm not going to hire somebody who has a label again. And I think there's such a disservice when we just put somebody there. And I think it's also really important, once we put somebody in a job that really fits who they are, is to ensure we have that job coaching from the beginning, and that's supported. And one of the things that we do at where I work is that we create opportunities more at the beginning, and then we phase that out, where the job seeker, or now the employee, can give feedback to their boss, and the boss can give feedback to that person, and just create some clear communication from the beginning, and people knowing, because that's with people without disabilities, that kind of happens informally all the time. We have, I notice a lot with employers who don't feel comfortable giving feedback to the person who has a disability. So I think creating a structure from the beginning to give that feedback is so important. I think that there's also one of the things that I'm running into so much these days is employers do not have an understanding of trauma and mental health. And especially with the pandemic, we're seeing that mental health is something that's coming up more and more. And that, I wish there's a lot of people that I work with, employers who I want to say, like, this person has trauma from their past. They've been trying to work for a long time, or there are things, and how do we really focus on what a person needs in order to be successful. And I think having an understanding, we don't want to share more than we need to about a person, because then that person gets these labels and these biases placed on them. But then at the same time, we want to let employers know what they need to do. And so I'll shift. I could probably talk about this a long time. So if there's anybody who wants to kind of have conversations, we can continue, because there's a lot. And I think that, you know, there's also a piece with job seekers of sometimes parents are the greatest supporters, and sometimes parents can be also a hindrance, and other people, or other supporters in people's lives. And how do we support the person in coming together? Moving to that employer side, you'll hear in our Employer Week, I think a really great interview I got to do with David Silverman, who used to work at Advanced Auto Parts and now is working at the James Emmett Company. And one of the things that he talks about, and I'm talking about, this is for a bigger company like Advanced Auto Parts, that they had stakeholders talking for months before they actually started hiring people. And he shared with me that now, and to this date in Georgia, Advanced Auto Parts has hired 50 people, and it's been highly successful because they brought to the table such a diverse stakeholder to say, how do we ensure this program is successful? And so I think I would love to see more large employers in our states getting some support and bring stakeholders together and bringing experts in who have experience of how do we make this successful. And it's also important that we look to our smaller employers, because we know people are more successful when they know their bosses, and they know their managers, and they have a connection, and there's not as big of a turnover. So we really need to create opportunities for small businesses to get also that support on what people need to be successful. And so, you know, I think we need that bigger policy, but then on the ground, I think that there's ways we really need to support those job seekers in order to be successful, and support and have more holistic ways that employers approach us, instead of just saying you should hire someone and then not having those supports in place. So I think there's a lot there and a lot to think about. So I think I'm going to stop there, but I think that's what I want to share as far as that goes.
Thank you, Amy. We're looking forward to disseminating the interview. You did a great job, and thank you. Both Ken and Christine are putting the Georgia APSE information in chat if you're looking for that. So let me call on Mr. Todd, and then panelists, if there's one of the policy imperatives that you really believe we should focus on. We want to hear from you on that after we hear from Mr. Todd. Go ahead, Darian.
Hi, I just want to, before I hopped off the last time, I wanted to piggyback on about what Cheryl was talking about, accommodations, and what she was talking about. I think that's a really big part too, about, you know, making sure when you hire a person with an intellectual and developmental disability, making sure you give them accommodations, and making sure that person that's over that job has an open mind, being willing to work with the student instead of saying, hey, I'm gonna give you these papers and I'm gonna need you to, you know, do these papers by a certain amount of time. But you can't do that. You have to work with them. You have to figure out what works for them, and also, you know, be a good mentor or boss to that person, because not everybody works the same as everybody else. So just having those, being open-minded to, you know, hearing how other people think and how everybody operates things, and how they just, because it really helps when that boss understands that the person that he's working with, disability or not, because it helps work in the office run smoothly, and make sure that person doesn't feel like they are doing less than what they're supposed to. So if you give that person the right tools and the right people to work with him, he will thrive in any area that person's in. So that's all I want to say about so that's it from me.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. And Patricia Satterfield is saying assistive technology is not as available as it could be, and we need to talk about that. That's absolutely. So back to the panelists, as we're at about 12, 13 minutes here. of those 8 policy imperatives, and anybody go, what should we focus on? They're big and ambitious, right? So what should we focus on?
We should do them all, Doug.
All right, I'll
We
take
should
that.
do,
vote.
we should do them all with a coordinated approach. That's what I really wanted to answer. I did choose one in preparation for the webinar, but I mean, I think we'd really be remiss if we didn't recognize that what they represent is a strategy for moving the needle by approaching the problem, if you will, from all sides, right? So identifying tax break, eliminating sub-minimum wage, recognizing the need to create demand through state as model employer. If we were tackling all of these things simultaneously, we would have a state poised to advance. That said, I think there is no reason at all that we ought not quickly forgo the order of selection, which you'll see is priority 5 there. Georgia consistently relinquishes federal money that could be spent towards vocational rehabilitation services. In this state, currently, we have 3 out of 4 priority categories closed, which means many, many people in Georgia who want rehab services are on a waiting list, so a secondary waiting list. There's a great GBPI, Georgia Budget and Policy Institute report linked there, and Christine Guggen has mentioned the APSI report to the same tune of the 32 million that Georgia doesn't draw down in federal match. So just tremendous lost opportunity with what I think is a simple fix. So wanted to highlight that one. Thanks.
I love it, Kate. I think we should do them all too. They are, those 8 policy imperatives connect to one another, right? There's undergirding, and that's purposeful. But everything from employment first in Georgia to what we've been talking about, it continues to be fragmented, and we won't get that traction unless we're doing things that are collaborative and together. It's strange to work in Tennessee. Now, I'm not saying Tennessee is a perfect state, but on this topic, it's hard to believe that we are so different than that state that's our neighbor. The rest of the panelists, what around the policy imperatives, what should we be focusing on?
Doug, I think that, well, for me, number 8 really spoke to me because education, technical guidance is kind of what we do in our office. And so I saw number 8 as a way to further educate employers about the benefits of having a diverse workforce, and showing them some real hard facts about why it's so beneficial. I often hear the term diversity and inclusion. That's the new buzzword that you hear a lot of people using. And oftentimes you find out that it's more of a focus on cultural diversity or race diversity, but not the inclusion of individuals with disabilities. Kind of like the disability piece gets forgotten when I hear the disability and inclusion portion of what companies and entities are trying to do to reach out to individuals with disabilities and get them into the workforce. So I think that, creating avenues in which employers and individuals who have disabilities who are seeking jobs can interface. I know years ago, the state, and this talks to you, this talking about how the state should kind of lead the effort. We used to have within the state of Georgia a job fair every October that focused on hiring individuals with disabilities in state government. And I don't know where that went to and why it disappeared, but those kind of efforts I think should come back in order to outreach and in order to create a more diverse field of candidates. I also think that we need to educate our employers more about like reasonable accommodation requests. I think sometimes employers are worried about, if I hire somebody with a disability, it's going to cost me a lot of money. And what they don't realize is that most reasonable accommodation methods cost nothing, or if they do cost something, it's less than $500. And so I think that the more that we inform employers about the benefits of having this workforce, and that it's not going to cost your company a whole lot of money to hire someone with a disability, and that there are all sorts of ways that these people can bring innovative thoughts and solutions to your job force, they're going to help you be more approachable to your clients and your customers who have disabilities. They're going to bring tools and things to your company that's going to benefit you. I think it would better help promote that idea, and employers would be more willing and less worried about what does it mean if I hire somebody with a disability. I think if we dispelled some of those fears and those myths, it would go a long way.
Oh, I do.
Beautifully said, Stacy. Thank you. There are a few things popping up. As always, guys, these webinars are designed to get us collaborating and talking and really trying to figure out how we can continue, as has been said a couple times today, beyond October. Celebrating is wonderful. Amplifying is great. Dissemination, training, technical assistance, all of that is wonderful. But an awareness month can only do that. The rest of it is, what work are we willing to do in the other 11 months to truly make what we know? We have one of the most dynamic economies in the country. It's fascinating if you read much about all the strengths we have in the Georgia economy. Think about that surplus during the time that we've been going through. That means that that's a strong economy. And we have people sitting on the sidelines who have talents and skills and passions, who make not just the workplace, but everything we do, our community is much more interesting, much more dynamic, and able to solve problems and embrace everyone. There's a bunch of stuff going in chat. I'm probably not going to get to it, but I wanted to continue with the panel on the 8 policy imperatives, just as Stacy was doing. Is there something we should be focusing on? If you haven't answered that question, we would love to hear from you.
Doug, as I stated during our interview, and I'll continue to state it, we need to get the word out. We need to communicate. And I think we need to ensure that stakeholders are at every table, that we hold this conversation. And so to reach out to those stakeholders would be extremely important. The policy imperative that I focused on was adopting an approach known as the state as model employer. And you spoke about it earlier, but I just wanted to remind all of us that Georgia leads in many initiatives and endeavors in our nation. And the suggestion is that we move forward with the same program, because it not only benefits individuals who have disabilities, but it benefits our employers, our economic situation, but it also is a benefit for the great state of Georgia.
Yes.
And because we become better when we're inclusive and when we're diverse. And so I know that that's number one for a reason, but it's something that stood out to me because I believe in Georgia and I know the things that we have available, as you talked about, resources and funding and things of that nature, but also we have heart and we believe in humanity. And so I believe we should come together and focus on making sure that Georgia is a model employer.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I know we're at the very end, but I feel like I need to jump in and focus on our number 2 about sub-minimum wage. Like, it is like, I can't believe that, like, that we're in a state that still supports sub-minimum wages and really that strongly believe that there's some people who are so incapable that they have to make less than others in that way. And I think that piece is real challenging for me. I think, if I was placed in a job that I wasn't good at, I wouldn't be as productive as I would place in a job that really that's really reflective of who I am. And so I think working to do that and show that we all have dignity and respect to be paid a living wage is something about that touches on our human rights, and let's all show that we all have human rights, and that there's not some of us that are less than, and how can we do better, and so that's something that I feel like, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. I think it's important to recognize that too. I had a smart aleck friend from another state say, "Hey, your celebration looks great. Don't know how you're going to celebrate NDEAM in a state that continues to use minimum wages." So pretty straightforward, my friends. If you have not seen those policy imperatives, please go to Advancing Employment. Joseph has put it in the chat, but it's available. You'll see it easily. Dinah, I hope you heard Cheryl Ann spell out the same acronym. It's also there. Just on the subminimum wages piece too, on the policy imperatives, if you'll go to the website, you can see 2 high-profile abuse stories of subminimum wages right here in Georgia. And that should be on our lips everywhere. The final thing I guess I want to say as we're capping this is we're thrilled that you all joined us today. I want to thank the panelists and certainly Joseph for directing us. We didn't get to everything, but that means this is a dynamic group. We invite you back next week. It's going to be a webinar on veterans with a wonderful person, Debbie Ball from Easter Seals of Southern California. Going to hear from her there. Please send it to veterans groups or others working in that sphere and let us know. Finally, right now in Congress, there's the bill for the Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act. There is one co-sponsor in the Southeast. That is it. One. There are 0 from Georgia. 0. We need to change that. Being a co-sponsor is not too big of a risk, but it tells you what that priority is from that standpoint. So let's amplify that as well. We will do the same thing in each one of these webinars, is trying to do that. It is 2 o'clock, but as always, we have a little ritual that we do where we stay on. So Amy and Joseph and any of the panelists want to stay on, we'll tell you goodbye. But if you stay on and want to chat a little more, we can do that as well. So for those of you who are leaving, thank you for joining us. Come back next week. And we're going to hang on here and see if there are any other questions. Looks like a bunch of chat. Thank you, Katrina Spooner. Thank you, Jessica. I'm glad you're able to come. And Nicole, I see what you're talking about with school transition. Yeah, I hear you. We need to do more there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been my experience with my son. He's 23, and it was just really hard with his transition. Person was saying companies don't want to take the risk. So if there's no training, what happens, like my son, he's aged out at 23 and no work. And so that's something that I am personally taking on. But to the speaker's point, it really has to begin way younger. I just think of all the time and money and effort I poured into getting my son into classes, regular classes, getting him all that, and none of that means anything now. So that, that's a longer term issue, but it speaks to pretty much what everyone has been saying here. This really has to start early, because there are just, as all of you know, lots of adults who are sitting at home who are very
That's
right.
What could you, Nicole, could you explain a little bit more about what the risks are that employers are most concerned about?
Well, this is what I learned from my son's transition coordinator, was that she was out trying to find, so his program, in schools, they have what they call a community-based vocational training, which is basically just, finding places where students can work. And learn skills, learn how to go to work, etc. And his director, the director always says that is the toughest problem that the transition officers have, are finding employers willing to have people with learning disabilities work in their place of employment. They are afraid of lawsuits. And that's what you said was always the problem, finding companies willing to open their doors to folks with disabilities. So, especially learning disabilities. I guess they are afraid if they did so accidentally, broke something, accidentally hurt one of their patrons or whatever, the employer would be responsible for, for that person. And again, that may not be their only reason, but that was the reason given to the transition coordinator. And she has since retired, but she's very active in the community, and I'm happy to put people together if they'd like to know more.
Doug, can I make one more point, please?
Sure, of course.
Because I have to sign off here in a few moments there, but I'm not sure if you or anyone else is aware of the Georgia Employment First Council. Came up back in 2018-19, House Bill 831. And it's got a list of people on there that are supposed to be members there. I've done some research into this. They haven't met in about 2 years. And it seems that the bureaucratic answer is because the deputy, which gets appointed by the governor's office, resigned for whatever reasons, and no one's been appointed to fill that. So
that's not the reason.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not the reason they're not meeting.
Good. Well,
because
I suspected that was suspected that was a facade, but
yeah, GVRA is just underinvested in hosting, and they misconceptualize the role of the Employment First Council, right? They think it's sort of an entity to address issues of the agency rather than an entity charged with connecting multiple systems to address employment across the state, across systems.
who does they, Kate?
GVRA, they're the mandated host
Yeah.
of that council in that legislation. And so they've consistently canceled. I mean, they've also had about 5 directors in 3 years, I think.
Correct.
Or maybe it's 5 and 4.
Yep.
So they've consistently, our executive director, Eric Jacobson, is appointed to that council.
Correct.
Notably important for this audience to know, that council is comprised largely of folks who don't have expertise in this area, right? So that's another kind of problematic.
Well, that was going to be my point. I don't know there's, from my previous life in the technical college system of Georgia, I don't know the person who is supposed to be there. And I don't know Dr. Williams from the university system, but maybe somehow, some way, I'll certainly reach out to the TCSG person, but other people need to be on these type of councils if they're going to do anything rather than just meet and have coffee. So as we talk about, broad-based approaches.
It's Duggan. Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's non-based on policy imperatives. Yeah.
I think, another
I think I might be
folks,
breaking up a little, maybe.
You are just a little, but I think an action step folks might take regarding that council and that legislation is that it's to the legislature that council owes reports. And so when the host agency declines to host, one might mention that to one's local elected officials, right? Because it is in law that they are to meet 4 times a year and that they are to produce annual analysis of the state's employment practices. So the accountability arc is to the Georgia Assembly. If that's helpful. Doug, I didn't want to talk over you, but I thought you might be frozen.
Yeah, don't worry about me. Megan, I didn't see you until now. Anything you want to add? We still got 25 folks on.
Thank you so much. I had it on my calendar for 2 all month, and I realized that we didn't do a shared calendar invite, and I should have double checked. And you even sent the email, and I skipped over it because I thought I knew 2 o'clock. It's all right, I'll be on, and had saved the Zoom link. I don't know what in the world I was thinking. I've just been sitting here working, so I'm so sorry. I can't even understand how my brain did that. But I missed kind of questions that I would have probably liked to answer. But I think throughout the month, we'll be sharing information from our side, from what employers are finding or they're up against and would like to know more about, or where there have been success stories. I think mostly I'll try to answer these questions through the employer week, starting October 11th, and share some of the places where you think that we can look at policy and look at what employers could do more effectively or focus on to drive employment.
Fantastic. That'll be great. It'll be perfect. It'll work out just fine. And we're just so glad to have you. Thank you, Megan. I've done that more times than I can count. I think it's because we have so many Zooms. Well,
so many Zooms, and
I need to be on a Rhode Island.
Megan, Nicole is asking you to introduce yourself. So maybe if you just want to put that in the chat while Doug is wrapping up.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
And Nicole, just love that you're participating. Would love to talk to you some more. I think we all would.
Well, I hope to
those
talk
8 policy imperatives should work together to help your wonderful 23-year-old who I'd love to meet as well. So, well, thank you, everyone. We look forward to next week. Share these webinars. We continue to try to do this in an informal way. And sometimes that means we're hearing from not only in that. So thank you all very, very much. Have a great first week of NDEAM, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thank you so much for hosting this, Doug. Nicole, can you hear me?
Got it. Yep, I got it. I'll follow up.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay, yeah, sure. We'll talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
You all too.
Bye.